Okay, so let's get started. Good afternoon all. My name is Rick Sethi and part of the Cloud and Infrastructure team at Professional Advantage. Welcome to our webinar on modern device management for the modern workplace. So the things we'll be covering today, traditional versus modern device management, how things have changed in the recent times. What is Windows Autopilot and Microsoft Intune? So these terms often get used interchangeably. What value do these MDM solutions bring to IT? And the last, we'll give you a sneak peek on the technologies, how they're working together. So this is an overview of different things that fit into this category, and just to give you some flavors on what's possible. And just to get a bit of feel of who we have in the call today, the type of audience we have, let's do a quick poll. So there'll be options on your screen there. We want to understand your key challenges. So you can select the option which is most relevant to you. Whether it's recreating images for new devices every single time, is it time-consuming desktop deployment and user management, or keeping corporate data safe in the BYOD environment, or is it the accessing remote user devices? So whichever option is most relevant to you, if you can please select that. So it helps us emphasize on those areas as part of the presentation today. Okay, so we can close the poll now. Thank you for contributing. So it seems like keeping corporate data safe is the most common challenge that we see amongst the audience today. After that comes a time-consuming desktop deployment, which is also going to be a core focus of our presentation today. So just to set this scene, to give a bit more of context, we're living in a new world today, right? The world is just full of, all dependent on remote working. In the last 12 months, we've seen a lot of organizations adapt to new technologies, new processes to get their business users work more productively. But one thing we picked up is the larger emphasis has been on the business users, not the IT so much. So IT has been very busy delivering the new solutions. So today we're going to focus on you. We're going to focus on IT, how to make your job a little easier. Now, we'll be focusing on the traditional device deployment versus the modern device deployment. So the traditional device deployment, as you see, IT is meant to, once somebody needs a new device, they get to deploy Office apps, drivers, policies, settings, all on the device, and then gets shipped out to the user. And this can be really a time-consuming process. I spoke to someone recently that mentioned it can take them 4 to 5 hours, every time a new device comes in. And with COVID, there's a new challenge because it comes to the office first, where it gets configured, and then it gets shipped out to the user again. So the costs associated with double shipping and all of that. Now, the technologies we'll be focusing on today will help you understand how do the modern device deployment work. So basically, in essence, which is what we're going to discuss in a bit more detail in the webinar today, when the device gets shipped to the user, it's pre-configured with the corporate policies and configurations without the IT being involved. So you can get it shipped directly from a vendor such as Dell, HP, or whoever, and without it coming to you first, and it's pre-configured with your business requirements, whatever policies, applications you want the users to use. So that can help you reduce the effort quite significantly. And the feedback I've received is like it can reduce the time by 1/3, if not more. So somebody who was using the traditional approach before recently switched to the modern technologies and the solutions that we're going to talk about, and they said it takes them less than an hour compared to 5 hours before this was configured. So without much ado, I will pass you on to my colleague Mohsin Memon, so who's going to talk about technologies and the points I mentioned before. So Mohsin is one of our senior solution architects. He's been in the industry for a long time now. He's configured this solution for a lot of our customers. He's quite passionate about technology, and he's going to show us, how Intune and Autopilot work together, and give us a sneak peek into technology as well. With that, I'll hand you over to Mohsin.
Thanks a lot, Rick. This is Mohsin Memon here. So I work alongside with Rick in the cloud and the security team at Professional Advantage. The first thing we're going to talk here today is what is Windows Autopilot. So Windows Autopilot is a collection of technologies which is used to configure and set up new devices as well as the existing devices. It can be configured to use as a near zero touch end-to-end provisioning for your Windows 10 device. You can also create multiple configuration profile and assign it to your device's settings. So what this means is you can create a configuration profile for your marketing department, which is going to be different to a configuration profile for your sales department. So that means when you're configuring a devices for those different departments, you can assign different settings and you can configure the profile accordingly. You can also configure Autopilot to customize the out-of-the-box experience specific to any organization. Autopilot is also compatible with the Azure cloud domain as well as the hybrid domain. So this means when you use Autopilot to configure new devices or an existing device, it will be joined to the domain automatically of your choice. One of the good things about the Autopilot is that it is not restricted to Intune. So this means if you are using an MDM solution of which is not Intune, or if you're using any other solution which is not Intune for your existing MDM needs, you can still configure Autopilot to configure new devices or reset or wipe your existing device, and then also continue using your existing MDM solution for your other needs. Autopilot can also be used as a comprehensive lifecycle management. So this means you can use to configure new devices. You can also use to configure existing devices and also to retire or wipe out or any devices which is out of warranty or not in use. With the Autopilot, you can also customize a lot of the out of the box experience. So what this means is when the end user, when he or she receives the device, the only thing the user has to do is to enter the email address and the password. So if you remember, when you go through the Windows 10 setup screen, there are a lot of things you have to configure and select before you can get to the actual login screen. So with the Autopilot, you can pre-configure the home or work selection. So in the Windows 10, you can specify if it's a work laptop, and you can have that information already loaded up in the Autopilot so the end user doesn't have to go through that. You can also configure the Autopilot to skip the OEM registration, so the end user doesn't have to go through and configure the registration settings. You can also configure the Autopilot to skip the Cortana and OneDrive settings. So this means when the end user log into the Windows 10 device after the configuration is completed, the Cortana and the OneDrive is already set up and ready for the end user. You can also skip the painful Windows 10 privacy settings screen using the Autopilot so that the end user doesn't have to go through and click no 10 times or 100 times, which has been quite painful for a lot of people. With the new 1709 version of Windows 10, you can also skip the enterprise licensing agreement with the Autopilot. So this means when you configure the Autopilot, the end user doesn't have to go through any of those settings. They literally put the credentials, satisfy the multi-factor authentication, and everything else will be done for them. Before I tell you guys and explain how the entire zero-touch provisioning works, I want to quickly talk about the remote challenges which more and more organizations are going through right now. And I want to explain how Autopilot can help you overcome those challenges. You can configure the Autopilot to roll out the Intune settings. So what this means, if you're doing a refresh fleet for your devices in your organization, you can configure the Autopilot and have the Intune roll out with them automatically. So once the Autopilot is completed, all the devices will be showing up in the Intune portal. Once those devices are already showing up in the Intune portal, you can sort of assign all sorts of security needs and make sure that your data doesn't fall in the hands of someone who doesn't need to have access to it. So as we know, we are in COVID right now. More and more people are working remotely, and it has become a bit of a challenge for a lot of the organization to make sure that the end user can get access to the data what they need, but at the same time make sure that the security of the data is not compromised. With the Intune, power of Intune along with the Autopilot, you can configure certain policies around that so that the end user can only access the data if the end user is accessing the data from a device which is a corporate device. Now, how is it going to know if it's a corporate device or not a corporate device? So that's where the Autopilot comes in. Autopilot helps you roll out the Intune. Once the Intune rollout is completed, the device will show up there. Once the device is showing up in Intune, that means it's a corporate device. So you can create a policy and say, okay, if an end user is trying to access the data from anywhere they are, like anywhere in the world, they can only access if the device is enrolled in Intune. Now, this can also work for personal devices as well. So If someone in your organization wants to access a data, which is like emails or access Teams from a personal device, and they don't want to enroll the device in Intune, what you can do is that you can force them. So next time when they log in, you can say, if you want to access the specific data, the device must be enrolled. Once the enrollment is completed, Intune will also configure and check if the device has proper antivirus installed, it has a proper firewall running. It will make sure that the device is up to date with certain Windows security patches. Once those demands are satisfied, then only it will allow the end user to access the data. So this works really well for BYO devices. So if you're kind of worried about giving access to an end user using a BYO devices, and you want to make sure that the security is still intact, you can configure the policy and allow the people to use BYO devices, providing the device has proper antivirus, device has a Windows firewall running, and it has a proper anti-spyware software running all the time. And all these things can be checked by Intune. The Intune will continuously check and make sure that the device is compliant before allowing the end user access to the data. So this is has become a big challenge for a lot of the organization, and we saw in the poll as well that more and more people are kind of worried about making sure that the user can access the data from wherever they are and make sure that the security of the data is not compromised. I'm going to go back to the autopilot and give you a little bit of snapshot around how the zero-touch provisioning works. So now, when you order a new device, there are two ways you can order it. One, you go through a hardware vendor. Now, this hardware vendor could be Dell, Lenovo, it could be Microsoft. When you order the devices through them, the hardware vendor will automatically configure the device ID to show up in the autopilot portal. So you would have to configure the device registration service. Once the device registration service is configured, every time you order a new device, and if the device is once shipped to your desired location, the device ID will automatically come up in the autopilot portal. Once it shows up in the portal, the next step for an IT person is to go in and assign a respective profile. Once the profile is assigned, that is it. That's the only thing the IT person has to do for the setup. The device can be shipped directly to the end user. The end user in this case will turn on the device, and the first step they will get is to go through the certain region settings. Once they've gone through that, they need to specify the email and the password, and the rest all will be downloaded automatically, considering they have a good internet connection, and all the profiles, apps, settings, etc. will be downloaded through the autopilot configuration. Now, this is the process if you order the device through a hardware vendor. Consider a scenario where you're not ordering through a hardware vendor and you're buying it through a retailer. Now, in this case, if you don't have the device registration service configured, this means someone has to manually enter the device ID in the autopilot portal. So in this case, an IT person will have the device delivered to them. They will get the device ID, or they can ask for the device ID to the retailer beforehand, and the retailer can provide the device information. Once they have got the information, they can manually go on the autopilot portal, enter the information, and assign the respective profile. Once the profile is assigned, the next steps are similar to what would happen in the first scenario with the hardware vendor. So in this case, the only thing the end user has to do was just to enter the credentials. I've got a quick demo as well, which I can show you and explain how the entire process works. So over here, I've got a device, which is a Windows 10 device. And the first thing I do is, it's a new device, I turn it on and I get a screen with the region settings. Now, this can also be automated in autopilot. Consider an example, you have an organization which is only based in Australia. And if that's the case, you can have these settings automatically added from the autopilot configuration, so the end user does not have to select the region. But if you're an organization like PA, where we have people working in different country and different region, then we want the user to select the region, and that can be done as well. So once we've selected the region, the next step on the Windows 10 screen, it will go through and ask about the keyboard layout. So there are a few more seconds here. Okay, so then you specify the keyboard layout, and you say you don't want to specify the second keyboard. Now, what it is doing is it is going and checking the Autopilot registration service to see if this specific device already has any profile assigned. This step could take a few more seconds because it needs to go in and see if there are any other settings it needs to pull out along with the profile. Once the information it needs and it will come back, the next step the end user will have to do in this case is to enter the login credentials. So we're just going to wait a few more seconds for this to go through. Fast forward the video. Okay, so now as you can see, the screen I get is welcome to Professional Advantage, trying to enter my email address. It will take me to the sign-in page for my organization. Once I've entered the password, if I've got a multi-factor authentication, which I have in this case, it will send me a multi-factor request, which I need to approve on my phone. I click next to that. So now, once the authentication request is successful, it has worked out. There is a configuration profile assigned to this specific device ID. This is going to start downloading the profiles. Now, that profile information will include all the application. It will also include all the settings. So for example, like for PA, we also have a VPN connection. So it will start downloading the VPN connection information. It will start downloading all the application like Microsoft Teams. It will start downloading the application like Outlook, Chrome, or Adobe Reader, etc. The other good thing with this whole configuration is it will also make sure the machine gets joined to the domain. So as you can see now, the machine has downloaded the profile, and we've come to a screen where you can see the Teams is automatically configured. You can also see the machine has already joined the pa.com.au domain. In this case, PA has got a hybrid domain, so the machine is already on the hybrid domain now, and it will, like, the machine name's already been assigned automatically as well. The next thing you can see the Outlook configuration, which is already on the machine as well. The Teams has already picked up my email address. As you can see, there's a Adobe Reader automatically installed over there. The Outlook is there. I just need to click connect, and it will start downloading my email profile. As you can see, the VPN configuration is already there, PA VPN. So I just need to click connect, and I'll be on my VPN connection. So that's it. The entire process over here was done remotely. So the end user got the device to wherever they are working it from, and the only thing the user had to do in this case was to enter the credentials, and the IT admin had to assign the relevant profile beforehand before the end user can go through and sign in onto the new device. So it is saving so much time. In the old days, you had to spin up a new VM, you have to get a new device, you have to assign a new image, you have to load new application, you have to put new hardware updates, etc. All of those information has been done using Autopilot. You don't have to go through any of the Windows 10 setup screen. The only thing was just the email address and the password. So before I finish it up, I'm going to go back to my colleague Rick. He's going to talk about the licensing requirements. He's going to talk about what licenses you guys need if you want to use the Autopilot, along with the Intune if required. So over to you, Rick.
Thank you, Mason. That was a great presentation. I'm sure everybody who saw it would have enjoyed it. You made it really look easy. The device getting shipped to the user directly, pre-configured. IT just has to, doesn't have to touch it. It's fantastic. I think the first thing that comes to your mind when you see something like this is how much it's going to cost me. So I'm going to touch on the licenses briefly. So the key elements of what you showed today, there's two subscriptions you need. One is AD Premium, and the other one is Intune. Now you can buy these components individually as well, but I'm going to talk about a bundle which we see is quite popular in the market. It's the new Microsoft 365 Business Premium that's been introduced by Microsoft. You may be across the new licensing models. Microsoft changed the name slightly. It's not called Office 365, it's called Microsoft 365 now. This bundle is quite popular, and as some people claim, the value included in this bundle is more than $50 per user per month. So you have your applications, your team, your SharePoint, your planner, all the Office 365 elements, And then in addition, you have the security elements as well. So AD Premium and Intune is what you need for what Motion has showcased today. In addition, you get Azure Information Protection as Advanced Threat Protection, and your Windows 10 Pro upgrade as part of it. It is quite a good bundle. Now, Professional Advantage is a Direct One CSP partner, so we have dedicated licensing experts. So if you want to discuss your scenario or what you currently have and how you can benefit from this bundle, any of the bundles which are available, please feel free to reach out to us. We have, we're offering a complimentary workshop to all the attendees who've joined the session today as well to discuss your scenario in a bit more detail with someone like Mosen or one of our other senior solution architects. You can reach out to us on these numbers, and there'll be a survey at the end. So we plan these seminars with these webinars based on the feedback we get from you. So please fill the survey to provide some feedback, and we'll start taking questions. The first one I've got here: how does Intune help me maintain security? Mosen, would you like to take that?
Yeah, sure. So with if you remember in the presentation earlier, I said that with the power of Intune and along with the Autopilot, what you can do is you can create certain policies so that the only people who can access the corporate data are the one who are trying to access from the device, which is compliant. And you can create certain policies where you can say that the device is only compliant if the device has certain antivirus installed, or it has Windows Firewall running, and if it's running above certain patch level. So this gives you a surety that anyone who is trying to access your corporate data or company data is accessing from a device which is secure. The other thing you can do with Intune is you can also create policies and say that if an end user is trying to access a data from a device, he or she can only save the attachment to OneDrive or to SharePoint. So for example, if I get an email with very confidential information and it has some information which I don't want it to go outside my organization, and it has an attachment, I can configure the Intune to only allow me to save the attachment to OneDrive or to SharePoint. What this means is my data is not going outside my cloud. It still remains in the cloud, and it's protected by all the security protocols.
Great.
That answers the question.
Yep, it does answer the security elements. The next question we have, Mosen, there is, so somebody wants to know, Autopilot is for initial setup and Intune is for ongoing maintenance. Is that how you would put it? So Autopilot just wants the device has been configured. It doesn't have any role to play after that phase.
Autopilot can be used to pre-configure, or you can even use Autopilot to reset your existing device and put a new Windows 10 on it. It's up to you. If you don't want to use, or when you configure the device with Autopilot, you can have an option to roll out Intune along with that. So what this means is that device will have Intune automatically installed, and going forward, that device can be managed with Intune as well. So Autopilot is to configure, reset, or wipe your existing device and install the new install the relevant application on it. And Intune is used to manage that device going forward.
Yeah. So basically, Autopilot can also be used even after the new device is rolled out. It can be used to reconfigure existing devices as well. So it's not only the case when a new device gets shipped out by the vendor. It can be used afterwards as well to reconfigure the existing. That's great. Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah.
No, I just want to say, if you've got an existing device and if that device is already showing up in Intune, you can reset it. And once the device is resetted, you can just assign the relevant configuration profile to that specific device ID. And once you've done that, the relevant user needs to just log in next time, and that user will have all the application settings, etc., downloaded the same way it did for the new devices.
Great. Okay. So the other question we have, Mosen, is if we have Active Directory on site, can this be used with Intune and Autopilot? So you don't need Azure AD. Can it be done with on-prem AD as well?
So if you already got an Active Directory, that Active Directory needs to sync to Azure AD. You need Azure Connect installed, and you need to have your users, devices, etc. already synced to the cloud. And if you already have that, which gives you a hybrid domain join, which we have at PA, and that's the one we use in the demo. In that case, yes, you can do it. But if you're not syncing your Active Directory to the cloud, which is obviously, it's just a standalone Active Directory, in that case, no autopilot will not work.
Okay, great. So the Azure AD configuration is required for autopilot
Correct.
and Intune to work seamlessly the way you've shown in the presentation today.
Yep.
Okay.
Either you go full cloud on the AD or you go hybrid cloud. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I've got an interesting question there. It's something I think everybody's concerned about when you get Intune configured. How does Intune impact BYOD users' privacy?
Okay. So in terms of BYOD device enrollment in Intune, when consider an example that I am a user working for PA and I want to enroll my mobile device, which is a personal device, and it's not provided to me by PA. In that case, I'm going to enroll the Intune on my mobile device. Now, the only information which PA can control on my mobile device is just the corporate data. And when I say the corporate data, that involves emails, Teams, etc. So all my personal apps which I have installed on my mobile phone, like Facebook, WhatsApp, or whatever, all those apps cannot be touched or managed by PA. So that means when I open the Intune app on my phone, it will clearly show me which are my personal apps and which are my work apps. Now consider an example that I've left PA and I'm leaving the organization. In that case, the IT admin can remove the Intune configuration from my mobile device, and that will only remove the corporate data like emails, Teams, or any other apps which were pushed via Intune. My personal apps will remain intact. They will have no control whatsoever onto my personal apps. And that's the same thing across all the BYOD devices when you enroll with Intune. So your end user can be confident that the only data which can be managed by the IT admin will be the corporate data, which is your emails, your Teams, etc.
Now that's great. Just to extend on that, Mohsin, from my personal experience, when we rolled this out at Professional Advantage, I got a notification saying that PA can only see the model serial number operating system. They cannot see the call and web history, location, email and text messages, contacts, passwords. So there's lots of the key things that a user would be concerned about. They can't be seen through Intune. So that was pretty helpful from a privacy perspective. Okay, so we've got 1 minute left, and I'm just going to take one more question, and that is, so what are the typical use cases for Intune and Autopilot? So did you want to summarize a few things we mentioned before, Mohsin? The key use cases for Intune and Autopilot?
Yeah, sure. So the first use case for Autopilot is, like, imagine everyone's working remotely as we know now, and we are in a pandemic, and that's going to be a new normal for a few years to come. And if you ordered a new device for a specific user and you don't want to configure anything on the device and you want to have all the settings, etc., downloaded automatically over the internet, you can ship the device directly to the end user, and the end user will have all the resources, whatever they need in order to complete their work. So that's a really good use case for Autopilot. Intune can be used in conjunction with Autopilot. So like, for example, you can use the same Autopilot to roll out Intune. So going forward, you can start managing that device. You can make sure that that device remains compliant and it has proper security, antivirus, firewall, etc. running all the time. So imagine a case like you've just enrolled a new device, you've given it to the end user. At the time of enrollment, the antivirus was running and something went wrong and the antivirus has stopped running. You have no visibility. And that's where Intune can help. Intune will make sure that that device is secure for the rest of the time and you can also create policies saying if the device is not secure, block the access. And once the access is blocked, you can also configure the notification settings to the IT admin and to the end user to let them know that the reason why your access has been blocked because your device is not secured anymore.
Great. Thanks for that. And before I wrap up, I've got one question that I think we should take. It's a good one. So can we push Intune onto devices currently using work data, or is it automatically enrolled?
Yes, you can roll out Intune to existing devices as well. There are certain ways to do the enrollment. You can create group policies and push out the agent through a group policy to do the enrollment. If you're running, obviously you're running Windows 10, there are manual way as well for an end user to go to the Windows 10 and enroll it themselves. Or they can also go to the Microsoft Store app and just download the Intune portal app and do it that way. But the best option is to do it automatically, remotely, which is via the group policy, and just making sure that the user joined the domain and the policy will run and it will complete the enrollment for them.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Mosi. With that, I think we'll just wrap up today, this afternoon. Thank you all for joining in today. We'll look forward to seeing you in our future events. Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.